Hey, good afternoon. This is Peter Joeckel from Turn On Dynamics, and welcome to our Fast 5 tips for getting an accurate quote on your AX to D365 upgrade project. On the call today, myself, Peter Joeckel, and Ajaz. And the key thing I wanted everybody to recognize here is that you've got over 50 years of ERP experience. A lot of that in the Dynamics space. And Ajaz, he's a lead architect and a service director, and he is currently working AX to D365 upgrade projects. So what you're going to get from him is the are the facts, as we see them with current projects. So if there's only one thing you remember from this call and you want to take away from this, if you want to guarantee no scope creep, there's a simple solution. Do not do one of these upgrade projects. I think one of the things that we have figured out and taken away from this is that these are almost implementation projects to a certain extent. So if all the things that you can think about from your previous experiences with doing upgrades in the AX world or different ERP solutions, this is going to probably be dramatically different or radically more different than anything else that you're used to. So very quickly here, what was the kind of the genesis of of this specific topic, the quoting topic, in these in this webinar series and our podcast series? Well, one of the things that we ran into is as we're working with customers and researching things and going through these upgrade processes, is that one thing is that working with a very large customer that went out and got quotes for an upgrade from a lot of different partners to get a sense of what this could potentially cost, and they came back with quotes that were from 400K to 5 million, right? And don't ask me where those quotes came from terms of range, but there you have it. And what that made me think about was, well, if you're going to be out here anticipating or trying to do one of these, and you have to rely on the quote that you get, and your range is 400K to 500 million, how are you taking that to your management team, or how are you taking that to ownership as far as what they can take to the bank? At the same time, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the components of the quoting process that are going to incur costs on your project, and project management and the project plan are going to be big parts of it that you're going to see. And if you see a project plan like the one that we have illustrated here, then that is not reality, because that's probably the $50 implementation upgrade plan, right? So seeing things of this nature out there in the AX Dynamics ecosystem got us to focus on the quoting process. So what I want to do then is let's talk about the Fast 5 tips for trying to get an accurate quote for your upgrade project from AX to D365. Again, the key, what we want to do here is we want to take our top 5 things that we've learned in working with customers and make this like a TED Talk, 12 minutes long, instead of dragging this out forever and getting to your questions quickly and efficiently. So the first thing that we have figured out is that the key element to quoting correctly is that it's all about the objects. So for non-technical folks, objects are pieces of software code of varying size and complexity and various numbers that exist inside your software. And what happens is that these various pieces of software code each individually have to be upgraded in the upgrade process, okay? And the key here is that the numbers and the complexity of these is going to be a large determiner of how expensive it is going to be to take your current AX implementation and upgrade it to D365. So from a, getting a little bit more technical, objects are in, they can be forms, they can be reports, classes, custom objects, custom integrations, and custom functionality, right? And what we have seen in the quoting process is that a lot of people will go out and take a look at the numbers of these various types of forms, and then make assumptions based on the type and the number, and then multiply that by some kind of an average, time amount that gets a customer that upgrade cost, based on those estimates. The thing that we have found is that you really have to dig inside of these objects individually, because a report can be very simple or a report can be exceptionally complex, right? A report can be print out a customer list, right? A report can be, give me sales by region, by salesperson, by profitability, on and on and on. And the same thing as customizations. Customizations could be very simple. Customizations could be very complex business, specific business requirements. And think about levels of complexity of integrations, right? Integrations can be very simple because we're uploading some files every now and then, or they could be very complex, very detailed, very, business critical integrations with legacy systems, other legacy business systems. So what's key to getting an accurate quote is looking at these objects, not only as in terms of the numbers, right? But we also have to be able to view inside of the objects regarding complexity, right? So that we get a true understanding of the type of, hours we need to take. So that takes us to our Fast 5 tip number 2. And what we have found is that especially if there is a reason to go live on a certain date or time, it is critical to have a project plan, and to have a project plan in a format that allows you to develop a critical path, analyze your resources and the changes and demands on those resources based on, change orders and changing requirements and requests, and be able to update those and upgrade those on an instantaneous ability. What we have found is that when we go out there and we look, in the market, we see lots of marketing plans that, as that one I showed kind of kiddingly at the front there, that are very simplistic and very straightforward, giving the impression that these upgrades are, to an extent, simplistic, straightforward, and remind people of the, the types of upgrades they've done forever. That is completely not the case, right? When we're currently looking at our project plans for very, I would say middle of the road, non-overly complex, right, implementations, we have project plans that have hundreds of line items, and we review those on a daily basis, okay? Because especially with these upgrade processes, with the upgrade process to the cloud with D365, there are tasks that have to be accomplished by Microsoft and that are no longer in control of yourself or of your partner, and the quota times for those tasks can vary wildly and can be wildly different from what you are quoted regarding, what Microsoft tells you it takes to do this. So the key takeaway for this is your project plan has to be flexible and updated almost instantly, so that critical paths, right, and acts of, what I call acts of God in Microsoft can be incorporated, instantaneously. And at the same time, if we have change orders, we can reflect those as far as the requirements. And so that takes us to our next and related, tip number 3 in the top Fast 5 for developing a good quote. What we have found is that it is absolutely key because of the number of moving parts and the level of sophistication of these types of projects, to literally have a dedicated project manager running these projects. Now, there can be a project, there has to be some type of project management from the customer side, there has to be project management from the, the partner side, but there has to be one global overall project manager that understands and runs the tools, to be able to, run a sophisticated tool such as Microsoft Project, so that we can constantly update project plans, resources, etc. But here's the thing. What we have figured out is that for a lot of what I consider your bigger partner firms, right, where both Ajaz and I come from as directors and owners in those types of organizations, is that your typical project management functionality is a 40-hour-a-week job, right? And so that adds a level of hours and dollars that adds up pretty quickly on one of these projects based on how long these can take, right? What we have found, however, is that a lot of those 40-hour resource types are basically, pretty, they're more, note takers and updaters, right? They're not true project managers. What we have found is that we think that the ideal mix here is that if you have about an hour, hour and a half to 2 hours, perhaps on some days, of a true project manager on a daily basis, that every single day can have a project call, hold people accountable, right? Update all the tasks, update resources, update the critical path. What we have found is that it's a critical function, but as far as we're concerned, not a full-time job, can be handled well, but needs to be handled well, like I said, about an hour, perhaps on budgeting, perhaps an hour a day as opposed to 8 hours a day. That takes us to our next tip, which is our fourth tip on the Fast Five, is what we consider, the path that we're going to take, right? And literally, based on where you are as a business, where you are on your current version of your AX, there's a ton of things for you to consider. And without considering all of those things, your budget could vary dramatically all over the board, right? So for example, when you're putting this budget together, are you going to go to the cloud, or is there some kind of imperative to stay on premise, right? Are we upgrading? Are we doing a true upgrade, or are we doing a reimplementation, right? And one of the surprising things that we've run across in, talking to lots of, prospects and customers about this process is that, are we going to go to D365 right away, or are we going to stabilize on R3 or the latest and greatest version of AX, because that's going to be the best path for us, and then consider an upgrade in 6 months, in 2 years, et cetera, right? So those are critical factors to consider when we're thinking about doing a quote, because those paths are hugely different in the amount of cost and the amount of time, right? So the key takeaway for me for me on this here is that a true quote here is going to require much more input than you're typically going to see in an upgrade process, right? There are very complex functional, technical, and business process considerations that you have to take a look at. You may be looking at a project plan that is literally, a detailed IT plan, that could undertake multiple years. So understanding that higher level, landscape, huge impact on your the quote that you're going to be taking a look at. The final that final Fast Five tip for how you're going to get a decent quote or a really good quote on this AX to D365 journey is change management, right? And a lot of people talk about change management, and it's this, buzzword, and people, freak out because, look, this is a software upgrade. We're not going in here to change the business. This is ridiculous. We're not going to allocate money to this. None of that stuff, right? However, you need to dig into this much deeper here because this is a very unique process. The key takeaway for me here is that your ability to modify D365, access data, work with integrations, right? All of that good stuff that people are used to in that AX world, right? The easy access to data, the ISVs being able to implement it easily, pulling data out, writing integrations, writing your own code. All of that stuff is incredibly more different and more complex in D365 than in AX. So it is really critical for you to take a look at how vanilla or off the shelf, right, you can make that new implementation when you move up to D365 as far as addressing key business requirements and processes, okay? Because the closer you can come to fitting your business or doing change management to fit the out-of-the-box functionality of the D365, there is going to be a world of difference in that type of quoting, in that kind of cost structure, because of the higher level of complexity of making changes, addressing changes, getting at data, doing integrations. So that is that is a critical thing that you need to look at. So what's next? Keep on following the conversation on our podcasts on MS Dynamics World and on our website at turnondynamics.com. I think that the quoting piece was probably the 5th or 6th topic that we've covered. And we're going to be doing these types of short presentations to keep people up to speed on what we're finding. And if you want to discuss your upgrade project, give me drop me an email at pjoeckel@turnondynamics.com. And I want to thank everybody for attending. Carrie, thanks for hosting, and Ajaz for adding your expertise. Hope to be speaking to everybody soon.